glad you were able to join us today. My name is Christine Zellers, and I'm with Rutgers Cooperative Extension's Family and Community Health Sciences Department of Cape May County. I want to take a minute and thank Julie Howard with the Ocean City Library, who is always such a gracious host for me to do the presentations. And I thank all of you again for joining us. I appreciate that. And I also want to thank Sherry Siriano, who wrote this presentation. Sherry has done, she's an educator like myself up in Warren County, and she has written many magnificent functional food presentations such as this one, and allows us as her colleagues to present them to our community. So I'm really happy to be able to share this one with you. I was just saying to Julie ahead of time, a lot of big scientific words in this one, so I'm going to try to get through them. I've been practicing, but you know, they're big scientific words. So without further ado, let's get started. Again, welcome to the Functional Foods for Life educational program. This program is brought to you from the Family and Community Health Sciences Department of Rutgers Cooperative Extension, which is the department I just explained I'm from. Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey. FCH provides educational nutrition and healthy lifestyles throughout the state of New Jersey and beyond. We've been doing Wellness Wednesdays. If you have not been able to join FCHS for any Wellness Wednesdays, feel free to email me. I'm going to send an email out after the program for follow-up. But if you want more information on Wellness Wednesday, we have people joining us on those calls from as far away as Guam. And there's really interesting varying topics there from FCHS. So I hope you'll join us for some of those. Our overall goal is to improve the health of individuals and families and communities with FCHS. So a little bit about a functional food, which I mentioned is what this presentation is considered on mushrooms. A functional food is one that has the potential benefit on health when consumed as part of a varied diet. According to the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, functional foods include whole foods, which are, you would consider a mushroom, just the mushroom, to be a whole food, as well as those that are fortified, enriched, or enhanced. All foods on some level are considered functional, and there are substances other than well-known nutrients in some foods that may provide health benefits. Foods with these potential health benefits are known as functional foods. It's important to note that there is no legal or universally accepted definition in the United States for functional foods, meaning that it's not regulated by any governmental body such as the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. The series of functional foods is solely focused on whole foods or beverages that have been shown through recent research to provide possible health benefits. As you may see, mushrooms have many qualities, and those qualities allow them to be defined as a functional food. Oh, now we're not advancing. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Yay. Okay, so the objectives of this talk today are to acquaint you with several different types of mushrooms. We're going to review a little bit about the history of mushrooms and learn the research and current believed health benefits of mushrooms, as well as the recommendations for including mushrooms as part of a healthful plant-based diet. The overarching message of Functional Foods for Life educational programs are to increase your understandings of the benefits of all plant-based foods, which obviously include mushrooms, and how they fit into a healthful diet. All right, so first, we're going to explore some vocabulary associated with mushrooms. And as I said, it's going to be trickled all throughout. But mycology is the study of mushrooms and other fungi. So a mycologist is one who studies mushrooms, and I am not a mycologist. I'm a nutrition educator. So I'm using the information that Sherry again put together in this great presentation to explain all this information to you. So please don't send me pictures of your fungi and ask me what they are, because you have to go specifically to a mycologist to get that information. Excuse me. Fungi reproduce from spores that are not plant. They're not a plant. They lack chlorophyll, and that is they lack chlorophyll that's in plants and seeds usually. So they're significantly different than other considered plants. Fungi are also the fruit of an organism, which grows either in the ground or on something that's living or dead. So in fact, fungi, they need organic matter that's made from living things to grow. So they can't use photosynthesis like, say, a tomato plant or other plants the way that other plants do. They ultimately rely on plants for food. So they're eating from the other plants. The mushroom is actually known as the fruiting body, as the macrofungus, which is a fungus that is large enough to be seen by the human eye. So let's talk a little bit about all the different, you'll see the mushrooms growing in the wild. So if you see one growing in the wild, a little different definition here. Pictured here are some of the most prominent parts of the mushroom. So the cap is the top of the mushroom. The stipe is the stem of the mushroom. The gills are on the underside of the cap, and they're responsible for the production of the mushroom spores. So they're the ones that kind of almost look like little lines. That's what the gills are. And the rings in the tissue covering the immature fungi are is what remains as the mushroom grows, leaving remnants of the ring on the stipe or the cap. So that's just a little bit. So now when you take your kids or your grandkids for a walk in the park and you see mushroom, you can tell them all the different parts that you just learned. All right, so fungi play an important role in our lives. In fact, they affect every facet of human life. They have many roles, which include, but are certainly not limited to, they take carbon and nitrogen from the air. They store carbon in mineral products. They form and maintain the structure and fertility of soils. They recycle nutrients from vegetable residue. They enhance plant productivity. They enhance the exchange of nutrients from plant to plant. They serve as a food source for humans, for other mammals, and some invertebrates. They regulate plant and insect populations. So they do a lot. They have a lot that they're contributing to our environment. So fungi do so many things that one popular mycologist states, "Have you thanked a fungus today?" And he did that to raise awareness of their important roles. So I guess that's some mushroom humor there for you. Have you thanked a fungus today? So a little bit about the history of mushrooms. According to the book In the Company of Mushrooms, A Biologist's Tale by Elo Shatner, we know that mushrooms were used in some ways as early as 5,000 to 5,500 years ago. And they know this because they discovered a Stone Age man in the Alps back in 1991. And the Stone Age man that they discovered was frozen and mummified, and his body was found by hikers on a glacier near the Italian-Australian border. And with that body, there were 3 remnants of tissue from certain types of fungi. One type was known, one of the types of mushrooms was used as tinder. So for making fire is probably why he had that, was to make fire with. And then it was speculated the other 2 types of fungi may have been used for medicinal purposes. This finding demonstrates the importance that different types of mushrooms had in the Stone Age society and how old they were. There is also evidence that mushrooms were used by ancient societies and religious ceremonies in the areas of Mexico, Siberia, and New Guinea. The writings of the Greeks in the 5th century BC regarding fungi came from important people such as Hippocrates and Epaphroditus, both referring to mushroom poisonings. And we'll touch a little bit more about that in a minute. But the Greeks and Romans also wrote of the joys as well as the dangers of eating mushrooms. They wrote of their confusion about where mushrooms originate due to the lack of visible seeds. And they decided that they were ferments of the earth, or they were produced by thunder. Mushrooms were later referred to as delicacies in European cookbooks of the Middle Ages. And modern study of mushrooms in a botanical sense was not occurring until the time of the Renaissance. So there's a lot of history behind mushrooms, and obviously people realized, good and bad effects of them long, long ago. In the 17th and 18th centuries, Pietro Antonio Micheli of Florence worked to prove that fungi developed from spores. And this was really an important observation that moved the study of mushrooms forward. Before that time, various theories were formed, as I mentioned earlier, including the thought that they did somehow reproduce from seeds or were generated spontaneously. In the 19th century, Elijah Fries compiled and organized a system to classify mushrooms, which has been used up to the present time. So, going back to the 19th century, important things happening too. Throughout most of time, humans have been collecting and eating wild mushrooms with many good and some not so good results. So, for example, in 1767, Johann Schobert, the gifted composer and famous organist and harpsichordist at the court of Versailles, picked wild mushrooms with his family outside of Paris. So he was told by his chefs that the mushrooms that he picked were poisonous, but he didn't listen. And he went ahead and prepared a soup with them anyway. And unfortunately, the entire family died after eating these mushrooms, except for one child in the family. So really should have listened to those chefs. And it just demonstrates how, they kind of knew what was poisonous back in the day, but people didn't always listen. So to that point, mushroom collecting continues to be a very, very popular pastime in many areas of the world. Mushroom picking should not be taken lightly. Some mushrooms are toxic, like I said, and some are toxic, but they resemble ones that aren't. So it's really hard to tell which ones are toxic or not toxic when you're getting them from the wild. Mushrooms that are obtained outside of a reliable vendor should be verified by someone who is known to have undertaken an in-depth study of mushrooms and is qualified to identify them. So again, want to make sure that you're using, if you're not buying them from the store, make sure that it's really somebody that has a good in-depth understanding of what is okay and what is not okay for you to consume. All right, so let's get into some of the science and mushroom classifications. The mushrooms on Earth, there's estimated to be 140,000 mushrooms on Earth. Yet only about 10% of the species are known. So again, want to be cautious. Of the 14,000 known named species, approximately 1/2 are thought to be edible, and 700 species are thought to have significant medicinal purposes. So the two major groups of mushrooms include the Ascomyces and the Bascomyces. The Ascomyces are different from the Biomyces because the location of the spore production in these two mushrooms. In the Ascomyces group, they're produced inside microscopic sausage-shaped organs within the mushroom. In the Biomyces group, the spores are produced outside the microscopic club-shaped reproductive organ. Popular types of Ascomyces mushrooms include morels, which is the top photo, and truffles. Common button mushrooms are examples of the Biomyces and are shown in the bottom photo. Button mushrooms are the most common mushrooms eaten in the United States. It's a little trivia for you there next time you're at a trivia contest. It's button mushrooms. They're the most common in the United States. Oops. All right, so some more popular mushrooms you might have seen at the grocery store, you might consume. With the Biomyces group are the Agrobioporus family, which includes the button, the cremelli, and the portobello mushrooms. White button mushrooms have been cultivated since the 18th century. The cremelli mushrooms are similar in appearance to white mushrooms, but have a light tan to rich brown cap with a firmer texture with a deeper, earthier flavor. Portobello mushrooms are the large relative of the white and cremini mushrooms with caps that measure up to 6 inches in diameter. And they have a deep meat-like flavor and texture. Other popular mushrooms in the United States are the shiitake and the maitake mushrooms. Shiitake mushrooms are tan to brown color. They have umbrella-shaped caps and curved stems, which should be removed. The caps taste best when they're cooked and have a rich woodsy taste and a meaty texture. The maitake mushroom is has a very different appearance. in that it has a rippling fan shaped structure, which you can see there in the bottom of the slide. There's no caps on this maitake mushroom. It also is the largest fungi, weighing up to 25 pounds and is bush-like in appearance. It's known as the hen of the woods because it's thought to resemble a small hen, which I can see, I'm sure you can too. And it has a distinctive aroma with a rich woodsy taste to it. All right, a little bit about truffles. So truffles are a Saccharomyces type of mushroom, and that is sought after for they're sought after for their unique taste and very delicious taste. They're the most expensive truffle ever was a 2-pound, 10-ounce rare white Alba truffle. And that sold for 95,000 euro or 112,000 US dollars. So that's quite a truffle there. They generally sell for about $225 to $550 per pound, but they can sell for up to $1,200 per pound. And this was one of the things I'm sure that when Sherry included this in this presentation, I thought this was really interesting. I was like, wow, for a mushroom, that's really quite expensive. So maybe the reason they're so expensive is the way you have to find them. Truffles grow under trees and they're not cultivated. So they need to be found in the wild. Dogs are generally used now to find truffles, but in the past, pigs were used because the pigs did not need to be trained to find the truffles. Actually, the female pigs can easily find the truffles, which grow underground, because of the similarity of the scent of the truffles to the scent of a male pig. So that's why they use the pigs to find them. The most popular types of truffles are the white truffle, found primarily in northern Italy, which is in the top photo there. And then the black truffle, found primarily in France, which is the bottom photo. All right, hold on, sorry. Notes. All right, so you've all heard about the 4 basic tastes that are sensed by receptors on our tongue. So there's sweet, salty, bitter, and sour. But there's also a 5th taste known as umahi, and it's derived from Japanese word yuma, which means delicious and also means savory or brothy or meaty. So to chefs and foodies, it has been thought to provide a complete balance of the flavors. And if you think about, if you've had some, say, portobello mushrooms, for instance, they do have that savory, brothy, or meaty type flavor. Mushrooms are an example of a food which provides the taste of umami. The darker of the mushroom, the more umami it contains. So for example, like I said, the portobellos, the shiitakes, the morels, and the porcinis are, when they're dried and cooked mushrooms, they have much more of the umami flavor than the fresh ones. Other foods that have the umami taste include some cheeses, to give you like a comparison for that taste, some cured meats, and fermented products such as soy sauce, pickles, and sauerkraut. So growing mushrooms. Mushrooms are grown year-round in a very specific way in an environment that is carefully controlled. They're not grown in soil-like plants, but they're started in a mix of organic materials known as substrate. That provides a nutritional balance to the growing mushroom. To start, the mushroom spawn is purchased from a commercial lab and then mixed with the substrate and then placed in trays for growing. A peat moss mix known as casing is then spread over the top of it, and that helps to hold the moisture within the trays. The first site of the mushroom pushing up through the casing is called the pinning stage, which is at the top picture there. And then soon after, the mushrooms are harvested all by hand. Overall, mushrooms grow in a 16 to 35 day cycle. The bottom photo, the top photo, like I said, is the pinning stage. And then the bottom photo is the harvesting in a commercial setting that you can see. So you can see where they start out and then where they kind of end. So when they're being harvested. When choosing mushrooms, there should be no visible moisture on the outside of the container or the package. So the mushroom should be dry. but not dried out, and they should be firm and plump. So if you've ever bought, I've had this happen, unfortunately, you buy a package of mushrooms at the store, and they kind of get pushed back to the crisper, and then you realize, oh no, if they're wilty, you don't want to eat them. You don't want that to have moisture or dried out. You want them to make sure they're firm and plump. And even when purchasing them, you should make sure that they're firm and plump. You want to store bulk or loose mushrooms in a paper bag or in the original package, and refrigerate for 1 week, up to 1 week. You can have them in the refrigerator. You want to saute mushrooms, but never fresh mushrooms can be frozen. So the reason for this is because, again, they'll hold that moisture in them. And when you defrost a fresh mushroom that was frozen, it's going to be kind of soggy. So you want to saute them first and then freeze them. To clean your mushrooms, you want to use a soft brush to remove any traces of peat moss or soil. Or rinse them quickly and then pat them dry. And you don't want to soak them in water, because too much water is going to make the mushrooms tough. So they're not going to be as good when you eat them. You don't want to clean them before you use them. You want to do it right before you use them. So don't bring them home and wash them and let them sit. Just clean them right before you use them. And don't wash mushrooms and then store them. Like I said, you don't want to get them that mushy context or consistency to them. Oh, this looks good. I haven't had lunch yet. That's a good idea for lunch. You can saute whole, sliced, or chopped or halved mushrooms. And for best results, add a small amount of oil to the pan with the heat on high. Place the mushrooms in a single layer, then turn them once when they've browned on one side, flipping them over and allowing them to cook until they're browned on the other side. For grilling or broiling, grilling obviously shown here, is another easy way to prepare mushrooms, and it works well for large cap mushrooms such as the portobellos or the shiitakes. You want to be sure to brush the caps and stems with oil to keep them moist, and grill or broil 4 to 6 inches from the heat source for 4 to 6 minutes. So you can remember 4 to 6 inches, 4 to 6 minutes on each side. You want to brush them once or twice. And it's a great way to make portobello mushroom burgers. It's a nice change from beef or turkey burgers, and it's a great choice for a meatless meal. If you're doing meatless Mondays, then you could have a portobello mushroom burger for your meatless meal. These, like I said, these are the grilled portobello mushrooms that are being shown. You can also microwave them. You want to season the mushroom cap if desired, and place in the microwave and cook. You want to cover them for 6 minutes and cook them. Remember, these are great. You want to, after you remove them from the microwave, there might be a little excess liquid on there. So you're going to want to remove that. And then you can place it on a whole wheat bun with your favorite burger condiments, just like you would a regular burger. And again, because they have that meaty, woodsy flavor, they do resemble that of a beef burger. Sliced mushrooms can be cooked in the microwave as well by placing in a bowl and cooking for 2 to 3 minutes, depending on the thickness of the mushroom. To roast mushrooms, you want to brush them with a small amount of oil, place them on a baking sheet, and roast them at 450 degrees Fahrenheit, and stir occasionally until browned on both sides, which is approximately 20 minutes, probably depending on the size of your mushrooms. All right, so how about the market trends? Mushroom production has grown significantly in the last 30 to 40 years, growing 5 to 7 annually since 1980. A large majority of the world's commercial mushrooms come from China, and 1/4 from European unions. The US supplies a small amount, with Japan, Indonesia, and Canada supplying an even smaller amount, about 1% each. In the United States, Pennsylvania has historically been the top producer of mushrooms, but other states are working towards increasing their production, which other states that are trying to do that are in North Carolina and in New York. Mushroom picking is a significant income source in the Pacific Northwest, potentially equaling the value that lumber can pull from the same forest. The photo pictured here are from farmers in a market in Portland, Oregon, and our colleague, Michelle Brill, was kind enough to take those pictures and contribute them for the slideshow. Although mushrooms are usually lumped into the vegetable category, they are not actually vegetables, and they have some unique characteristics that have had some experts suggesting they should have their own food kingdom, separate from animals or plants. These characteristics include that they lack chlorophyll and they do not make their own food through ingestion like animals or photosynthesis like plants, but live on decaying material. A mushroom do not contain cellulose found in plant foods, but they do contain fiber found in the form of chitin, an insoluble dietary fiber that is not found in plants. That's what chitin is, but rather in an exoskeleton of insects and crustaceans. So they have that similarity. So it is kind of a unique situation that they have. And I guess that's why the suggestion for their own plant kingdom or own area, food kingdom. Mushrooms do not contain cholesterol as found in animals, but they do contain sterol known as agrostol. Time will tell whether or not they get their own food kingdom. We'll see. You have to stay tuned on that one. But I thought it was interesting too that they're even considering a whole new food kingdom for them. Mushrooms are low in fat and they're also low in calories. So 1 cup serving provides about 20 calories. So that's a pretty good rate. Differing amounts of vitamins and minerals are found in mushrooms, and that depends on the type of mushroom. In general, they're a good source of selenium, copper, niacin, and pathogenic acid, and they're excellent sources of riboflavin. The type of vitamin B12 found in mushrooms is the same type that is found in animal foods. However, the amount in mushrooms is small. So vegetarians cannot rely on mushrooms alone for their sole source of B12. Mushrooms contain a fairly significant amount of potassium with 550 milligrams per cup cooked. Mushrooms also have the ability to have significant vitamin D content, dependent on their exposure to ultraviolet rays or light. So for example, a serving 100 grams of raw portobello mushrooms exposed to UV light has 446 IU of vitamin D. These mushrooms grown without UV exposure have 10 IU of vitamin D. So for comparison, 1 cup of milk has 117 IU. Most of the mushrooms are cultivated and grown in the dark, but those that are grown in the wild are naturally excellent sources of vitamin D. But again, we don't want to go picking the ones in the wild and not knowing what they are to get vitamin D from them. It is suggested that consumers can expose the cultivated mushrooms that they purchase to sunlight to increase vitamin D content. And this is somewhat of an impractical suggestion. Perhaps the mushroom industry will eventually routinely expose mushrooms to UV light and label them as such in the future. But for right now, that's not happening. It is important to note that although we can produce our own vitamin D by exposure to the sun in small amounts, we do obtain some from animal sources such as milk products, and there are no vegetables that contain vitamin D. Vitamin D sources and their availability is important because it has been found that many people in the United States have a vitamin D deficiency, and mushrooms could also be a source of vitamin D for vegetarians. All right, so the nutritional value of mushrooms, a little bit more about this. The amino acid arthiacin is an essential amino acid, and that means it cannot be made by humans and it needs to be consumed. So we need to eat it to get it. There are a few dietary sources of your garthin, including black and red beans, oat bran, kidney, liver, and mushrooms. Mushrooms are actually a good source, with oyster mushrooms, maitake, and shiitake mushrooms containing some of the highest amounts among mushrooms. The photo here is of oyster mushrooms. What is potentially important about the amino acid is that it acts like as a very stable antioxidant in the body. And it's been suggested that it should be designated as a vitamin because of the unique roles that it plays. Mushrooms provide a moderate source of fiber, with some types providing more than others. So for example, white button mushrooms provide the least amount at 1.9 grams of fiber per cup. Oyster mushrooms with 2.0 grams of fiber per cup, and portobello have 2.7 grams of fiber per cup. Shiitake has 3.2 grams of fiber per cup. So these amounts can be compared to vegetables such as broccoli, which provides 1.5 grams per cup of fiber, and blueberries, which has 3.6 grams of fiber per cup. So they're not, mushrooms are not lacking fiber, but again, there's going to be a varying amount depending on the type of mushroom you are eating. The possible health benefits of mushrooms appear to be numerous. In fact, mushrooms have been attributed to producing more than 100 medicinal functions, such as antioxidants and antiviral activities, and functioning in ways that promote protection against cancer, diabetes, heart disease, and allergies, as well as cognition, weight management, and oral health. As a result, studies confirm the possible health benefits of mushrooms. It's really important to note that the studies are conducted using both solids and extracts from mushrooms. More studies, especially those with whole mushrooms and with people, are needed to confirm their exact benefits, but there does not seem to be any argument that mushrooms are beneficial to our health. It is only the extent to which they're beneficial that needs further study and clarification. In fact, according to the Book of Biodiversity on Fungi, their role in human life, mushrooms are considered a nutritionally functional food. Okay, so mushrooms have been used for medicinal purposes, as I mentioned, for hundreds of years, particularly in the East. Medicinal mushrooms have been recognized in China, Japan, and Malaysia for over 2,000 years. There are written records of the use of shiitake mushrooms for medicinal use in Japan as early as 199 AD. Studying mushrooms and their roles in cancer prevention started in part when it was noticed that mushroom farmers did not have the same rate of cancer deaths as other people. Usually, when you do research, it's done first on a certain isolated compound in a food item, and then this has been true with mushrooms as well. Specific compounds in mushrooms are being formally studied to determine their potential health benefits. Use of medicinal mushrooms in the East includes the use of mushrooms such as reishi, shiitake, and maitake for the prevention of cancer and cancer treatments. They've been used alone as well as in conjunction with chemotherapy and radiation therapy. This practice has been found to increase the likelihood of cell death and decrease the spreading of cancer cells. A significant substance found in mushrooms that has been studied for its health benefits is a group of polysaccharides, which are large carbohydrates, known as beta-glucans. Beta-glucans are a type of fiber that is also found in other plant foods, such as oats, barley, seaweed, and algae. They are known for their ability to contribute to our immune function and for cancer prevention and suppression. There are also promising studies results indicating the potential for mushroom consumption to provide a positive effect on certain breast cancers, especially estrogen receptor positive tumors. More research is needed in this area, but there is, like I said, there's a lot of positive outlook on that. So they're continuing the research. Cognition. So there's been some studies on animal models on mice that have indicated a possible protective effect from mushroom enriched with a form of vitamin D known as vitamin D2. These actions on in the brain can lead to dementia and Alzheimer's. So further research is needed and warranted, especially on people, but they're hopeful that there might be some impacts from that study of D2. Mushrooms have been studied as a source of satisfying low-calorie foods in exchange for high-calorie foods, such as high-fat meats to promote weight management. So as I mentioned, people sometimes sub out that cheeseburger for the portobello burger. This is possibly because meals with mushrooms have been found to be as palatable and filling as meat. So they're finding that that substitution, a lot of times people are like, oh, I really need meat. But the mushrooms are just as palatable for people and make them full and content. Some studies have shown that a lower caloric intake, which results in weight loss, is possible when participants have been instructed to substitute mushrooms for meat. A one-year clinical trial reported weight loss that was maintained for 6 months after subjects were on a mushroom substitution diet, and also reported a benefit to other health parameters, including blood pressure, lipid levels, and inflammatory markers. Whether or not the change in caloric intake and weight loss can continue and be maintained is in need of further study. So whether or not people can continually make that substitution. But in the meantime, it is clear that mushrooms, as well as other low-calorie, nutrient-dense food, are a good choice as a substitution in meals to potentially promote weight management. So some other health benefits, you can see there's a plethora of them here for mushrooms. There are numerous other potential health benefits of a diet that includes mushrooms. The lowering of fasting blood glucose and serum insulin levels, which can assist in protecting against type 2 diabetes, has been studied with positive results, as has the decreased levels of total and LDL cholesterol and triglycerides, and increased levels of HDL cholesterol, which could lead to protection against heart disease. Mushrooms are also linked to enhancing our immune function through the activity of important components in the body that protect us from viruses and development of tumors. Mushrooms have also been associated with maintenance of good bacteria for our gut. And there's emerging research that indicates possible protection of oral health as well. So kind of whole body from these mushrooms that we're getting the benefits of. All right, so Julie, I'm not sure if you've been checking in the chat or not for questions. I can try to field some of those if we have any.
Sure, let me see. I don't see any questions in the chat box currently, but if anyone has questions for Chris, you can put them in the chat box at the bottom, or you can use the Q&A section. So we'll give you guys a few minutes if you want to put your questions in. But I want to just thank Chris Zellers, as always, for a really informative program for us today. I learned a lot, and I hope all of you did too. And I was just telling Chris that there's actually a documentary that I saw that's on Netflix. I think it's called like Fantastic Fungi. So I was like thinking about that and how like after listening to everything that you shared with us today, Chris, I'm just really interested in learning more about everything.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out, Julie. It sounds interesting. So also I'm gonna go, I have a few more slides I'll go on. But if you do have questions, like I said, I'm going to be sending an email out afterwards. It'll have my contact information. I always enjoy getting questions, and at Rutgers Cooperative Extension, we don't always know the answer. I'll be the first to say that, but we will try our hardest to find the answer for you. So that's part of our role, is helping the community find those answers. So I can look into that. So feel free to respond back to me if you do have questions that you didn't think of until after the presentation. So in conclusion, it appears that mushrooms are part of a healthy plant-based diet, and they really fit nicely within the recommendations for the prevention of chronic diseases, including heart disease and certain types of cancer. It's important to enjoy a variety of mushrooms and stay tuned as more research findings are reported, and eat mushrooms as part of a healthful diet that includes other whole plant-based foods, which include vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and legumes. One way to do this is to substitute mushrooms, as we mentioned a few times, for high-fat meats and enhance your already meatless meals with mushrooms. They do add a lot of nice flavor. I always love to roast vegetables and make sure mushrooms are one of them because they do add a nice hearty flavor. Here's some suggestions of places that you can learn more about mushrooms. I'll include this information when I send the follow-up email. It has recipes there. You can visit the Mushroom Council website. You can browse through the field guide on mushrooms, or for some serious reading, you could try the biodiversity of fungi, their role in human life. And finally, for the true mushroom lover, visit the annual Mushroom Festival held each year in September in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, for those of us that are in New Jersey or Pennsylvania. We did receive an email this morning, which was great, from Kennett Square. Susan in Kennett Square sent us a great email that had a picture and said, hey, did you know that Kennett Square is the mushroom capital? So yeah, so that information's out there. I'm not sure, because of the pandemic and everything's going on, whether or not they're having that event or not, but if you're interested, it's certainly something pretty cool to check out. And thank you, Susan, for sending that. It was great to get that this morning. And then also some more functional foods. I know I've done a few already for the library, but our topics, they include berries and coffee, as well as chocolate, which we did back in February for the library. There's tea, and then of course vegetables are part of the functional food educational programs that we offer. All right, again, Sherry Siriano was great enough to make this presentation, and I thank her for that. It's always great to be able to present people's information and share how great of a job, hard work she did on this.